Here's specifically what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about young men, old men, sailors, fiancés, and best friends. We're going to talk about honesty, dating, and cost thresholds. We're going to talk about used cars, used car salesmen, and mothers. We're going to talk about naval aviators, natives from the Solomon Islands, and kindergarten. We're going to talk about kids, cars, and trust. We're going to talk about trust, credibility, and leadership. And finally, we're going to talk about airplanes. We're going to talk about accidents. We're going to talk about hospitals. We're going to talk about family. And we're going to talk about Magnolia blossoms. When I said earlier that an assumption of this workshop is that it's about good people that sometimes make bad decisions, let me change my tune a little bit. And what I'm going to say is that none of us in this room are honest. We're all basically honest. And the difference between being honest and being basically honest is basically honest means you're honest unless it costs you too much. Hardly ever lying means you don't lie unless it's important. I mean, think about it. If it's in our self-interest to tell the truth, big deal. The question is, when it's not in our self-interest, that's when we find out whether we're honest or just basically honest. And the decision process we go through has a thing called a cost threshold. What is the cost? What do I have to pay in terms of being honest or in terms of being basically honest? So I want to explore this concept of cost threshold a little bit. Tom, can I ask your help? Sure. Okay, here's the situation. We're going to go back 3 or 4 years in time. Okay? You're back in high school. Tom's in high school. And he's been trying to get a date with a young woman. Already getting some reaction. Trying to get a date with a young woman in high school. And for some reason, his charm is not coming across. And she's just turning him down. I mean, big time, you are flaming out. Okay? He's resonating with this. Okay? It's all coming back. So, you keep asking her, she keeps turning you down. Well, there's a spring formal coming, and it's your senior year. You have some classes with her, and you keep asking her, and finally you ask her for the spring formal, and she says yes. Now, you just figure she's a slow learner. It just took her a while to realize your charm. But she says yes. So now you're feeling pretty good about it. You see her in classes the week before the spring formal. And she's telling you how much she's looking forward to this. And she even tells you that she went out and she bought a new outfit for the spring formal. Now, she's not so crass as to tell you how much money she spent. But you know from where she bought it. They don't sell anything cheap there. So Tom is thinking to himself, hey, this is really cool. She's taking this serious. So the night occurs of the spring formal. You're decked out in your tux. You're really looking good. You go to her house, okay? It's a 2-story house. You knock on the door, and her father comes to the door. Well, she's not ready right now, so you're making small talk and trying to think of something to say as you think, when is she coming out? And so the way this house is configured, you have to understand this. This house is configured in such a way that you're standing down at the base of the stairs, and the stairs go up, and there's this intermediate landing, and then they turn 180 degrees and go up the rest of the way, so it's this 2-story house. So Tom's there, and he's trying to make small talk with her father, and you just kind of think, come on. And so while you're talking, he starts to hear footsteps up on the kind of walkway, and you sense her presence. Well, his heart's starting to go like this as he's realizing she's finally coming. And so she starts down the steps, and she goes down the steps, and she turns on this intermediate little walkway, and you're looking up at the intermediate landing, and you see her for the first time. Now, you've never dated her, she's never gone out with you, but you know her pretty well. You know the body language, you know the facial expression, and you look at her, and the facial expression, she's beaming. She's just absolutely ready. It's one of those things that I feel good, okay? So you're looking up there, and that's one thing that comes to mind. But there's something else that comes to mind, and it's a single word that comes into Tom's mind as he looks up, and that word is Idaho. Now you say, Idaho. Why on earth Idaho? It's because you look at the outfit that she's wearing, and it fits her like a sack of potatoes. It's just like, oh my. She walks down. She's descending the steps. Well, let's put some action on it. She walks over. She hooks her arm in you. She looks into David Brown or whatever and says, Tom. She calls you Tom. You got to understand. She said, Tommy, how do I look? I submit our hero has a cost threshold here on whether he's going to be honest or basically honest. So amongst all your friends here, what are you going to say?
Ravishing.
You look ravishing. That's an interesting word. Interesting choice. Interesting choice of word. When we talk about this in a workplace environment, you know, if you get to that point where if it's going to be a test question, you stop and say, remember this? One of the points that we make is while we have some fun on this concept of a cost threshold, it's a very serious concept. Indeed, when you look at management accountabilities, because managers, by their actions and their words, can drive the real or perceived cost of doing something that may be not consistent with the values of the organization. So managers define cost thresholds, and it underscores the fundamental responsibility of managers never to ask their employees to do anything that is out of alignment with the values and the ethical model of the organization. Because if you do, you run the risk of a good person making a bad decision. I want to talk about respect and caring. Now, when I conduct this workshop internally, every once in a while, I get some interesting people that I can talk with. In one workshop, I had a retired rear admiral in the Navy that was a Navy pilot, and I talked to him about this. You know, sort of the reputation of pilots and, you know, the kind of swashbuckling types that they are. So I read him this as we were talking about respect and caring. The average Navy pilot, despite the sometimes swaggering exterior, is very much capable of such feelings as love, affection, intimacy, and care. However, these feelings just don't involve anyone else. So, this next chart is, although it's a cartoon, is perhaps one of the most important charts that I show our managers, and I want to share with you. Because this is sort of about risk management. This is about that real world that's out there. This is about the kind of pressures that we talked about. This is where you're doing a project or you're engaged in something, and for whatever the reason, you become so focused on getting the job done at all costs, you lose sight of other things. That can happen for a number of reasons. You can be in a situation where the demands of the contract are such that they're totally unreasonable. You could be in a situation where you've had some problems. You've fallen behind the schedule. You've got problems with quality. The cost is overrun. The pressure's on you. And you're an individual that's gone to this college. You've graduated. And everything you've touched and done, you've been successful. And now you're put in a situation where you might fail. And you don't know how to deal with that. So as you go forward, and you're having to deal with some of the pressures that are out there, keep your priorities straight. Think of the magnolia blossoms in your life. Think of the kind of person that you want to be. Because if you do that, number one, you'll make the right decisions. And number two, you're laying the foundations to being that effective leader, both on your technical competence as well as your character.